What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Cleveland Pulse podcast. As always, I am your host, Justin Harold, with my co-host, Jeff Santa. How you doing, Jeff?
Good, buddy. Just hanging out, slow little Thursday here on the schedule. So we're going to get this in real quick.
Yeah, so this is episode 12, of course, and, today is Thursday, and the Indians, we're going to talk about them, and we're going to talk about the Browns preview for the Dallas Cowboys game this coming week. Honestly, I want to kind of get the bad out of the way immediately. So let's talk a little bit about the Indians, Jeff. Obviously, you're our resident baseball guy here, so we'll let you talk about them to start.
Yeah, I mean, long game last night. We did fall 10-9 to the New York Yankees in two games, and that's kind of just how baseball goes. I know that's not really going to be, a huge, helping factor for Indians fans out there, because we did just lose two straight, and really with just lackluster performances, and definitely the second game, which we should have won. And I feel like it is constant excuses with our performance in the playoffs, especially since our 2016, World Series run. But it's going to be kind of a different offseason, and it should be, a totally new look squad next year, with some things that are, in rumors, and some things that I expect to happen, if you want me to touch on that a little bit. But just not great performances from our pitching staff, which kind of was the staple of our team for the whole season. We knew that the bats were shaky, and, with putting up 9 runs against that Yankees squad, we definitely should have won that game. But a couple of postseason debuts that just go a little bit sour for our pitchers. I mean, that's Shane Bieber's postseason debut, believe it or not. Tristan McKenzie gives up a postseason home run last night. That was, highly unfortunate. We just had their bullpen just has more experience than us. Boone, their manager, has more experience than Sandy Alomar, and it showed last night. So just kind of a culmination of a lot of bad things.
Yeah, and I think mainly to talk about the pitching is probably the story here because, like you said, we knew coming into this that the batting is, subpar at best, with a lot of our late wins in this season coming off of walk-offs and such. I texted you after the Shane Bieber game. I was just like, this is typical of, with not Bieber, but with not Clevenger either. My God.
Kluber.
With
Just our
Kluber,
aces in general.
yeah, our aces just this is a typical postseason game where they come in and they're like, oh, they've never or like they've hardly lost or they've hardly given up any runs or anything, and then Bieber just comes in and completely blows it, and not a good showing overall with our pitching, like you said. Tristan McKenzie coming in last night as a reliever and giving up a homer, which wasn't great. It's just, and you know what? I think if we could stick on the pitching all night, but I think, you were alluding to rumors. Let's just talk about how Francisco Lindor just absolutely disappeared I think this might have been his worst season since, he's been a superstar and everything. And just talk about him not showing up at all and kind of going into this offseason with him.
Right. Definitely his worst season, since he's been on our major league roster. Can't really hold it against him because it's 60 games, and a player like him and a lot of guys just in general take 60 games, to get loose and get their swings figured out. But I mean, just someone I saw it all around the league yesterday. The clutch players in the playoffs and all the games yesterday, they were coming up big. And his 2016 postseason performance, that big home run against the Yankees, actually, that propelled us into the lead. I mean, besides that, just not a whole lot of highlights offensively when we've needed him in the past, 4 or 5 years. So Jose Ramirez definitely looks like a better player than him, even if his defense struggles. I mean, MLB is all about offense. It has been for the past couple of years. But I just think, Jose, tip your cap to Jose, and I mean, tip your cap to Josh Naylor. Talk about, hopefully winning that trade. That kid looks like a stud, and he looks like he's primed and ready for, playoff runs in the future. But typical Indians, how we just have our bats that, are good during the year, your Lindors and your Santanas and even your Franmil Reyeses, just gone, go cold, completely disappear in the postseason.
Yeah, and so we'll come back to Lindor in a minute, but just talk to me about these series where you only get 2 games to really it can be done in 2 games like it was this time for the Indians, but just talk to me about those how the playoffs work in general and not getting enough time to kind of like warm up and kind of get a feel for the Yankees.
Right. Looking back at it, I thought it was a favorable matchup. I really did. I kind of thought it was going to be, an easier series to win than even if we played the Twins. I guess I completely forgot about how bad the Twins have been in the playoffs because they've lost 18 straight playoff games, and I did not know that when we talked about the seeding. So, looking back at it, I rather would have played them. I definitely rather would have played the White Sox just for the pure fact that how this schedule is set up. We didn't play the Yankees once this year. We know what we're going to get from them, and really it just came down to postseason experience, which is pretty big in baseball. I mean, Garrett Cole, the best pitcher in the postseason, probably the last 2 or 3 seasons, and, probably the last 5 years. You can throw him and Kershaw's name in the hat for that. But, I mean, him versus Bieber, game 1, I would have rather faced, Giolito from the White Sox, who had less playoff experience, or, whoever the Twins would have thrown at us game 1. And man, their lineup's just so good. But I was confident about their lineup, maybe being cold, coming into the playoffs, and hopefully we could shut them down, shut their offense down. But 22 runs in 2 games, I mean, we're never winning those games.
Yeah, and so let's get away a little bit from that, and they are now technically in the postseason for what they're going to do in free agency and the draft and all that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to share with you a tweet that I ended up typing up this morning and just not sending it out because of I didn't want to. I don't know. I guess I wanted to talk to you about it first. But word for word, this is what I said. I said, what would hurt more as an Indians fan than this sweep by the Yankees? It would be seeing Francisco Lindor get paid this offseason by the same Yankees.
Yeah, I agree, man. It's just, I don't know. I'm so upset about the whole situation. I can't stand when the Indians are, losing the playoffs, and they're just my favorite Cleveland sports team to watch, especially just because they've been in the postseason for, 8 straight winning seasons, which it's kind of like getting the fan base's hopes up just to disappoint at the end. But, I totally agree with that sentiment that you're trying to relay through that tweet. I don't know. I think the Yankees – I think we're trading him. I think he's gone. I think he's gone through a trade. Could be the Yankees, could be the Dodgers, I guess, just because they're going to have the buying power to pay him, eventually or whatever he wants. But I hope I'm wrong because I love the kid and I love what he brings to the game of baseball, and I think he's good for the brand, good for the sport. And I hope I'm eating my words here in a couple of years, but I don't think he's worth $300 million right now.
Yeah, and I mean, especially with the lackluster season he had, I understand that there's only 60 games and you can only do so much and then go into the playoffs with what you had. But my thing with Frankie is I've always just gotten the sense that he really, and maybe this is just a hopeful optimist in me with Indians or with Cleveland stuff in general, is that I just feel like he has a loving for the city and a passion for the game, and maybe that passion and love for the city will, allow him to come down in his market price and his asking price with the Indians in the negotiations. Is he still under contract for next season for us?
Yes, I believe so. So I think, he either plays next year with us and walks, or we trade him away this offseason. But a lot of what I've been seeing on Twitter, which, I don't love Twitter as a source for, my sports outlet, my sports news for the most part. But, it's just as kind of the facts. And, you could say what you want about the Dolans. My kind of whole philosophy's changing with the Indians, man, over the past, 2 or 3 seasons. You could say what you want about the Dolans, but they give us a chance. Like, they brought in Terry Francona. They put us in the playoffs and give us, a chance to make a run. And we did in 2016, but they're not paying him. And even if he's going to take a cut, it's going to have to be huge for the Dolans to pay him. I think it's almost certain we deal him. I doubt we re-sign Carlos Santana. and I don't believe we're going to be able to re-sign Brad Hand. So that's three of your core players. I'm really hoping that they stick with Cesar Hernandez. I believe that his contract was only 1 year, and I really loved what I saw from him all 60 games. So if they're going to stick with anybody, at this point, I'd rather stick with Jose. And, we're going to get a haul for Lindor. So,
Right.
and we've been known to do that in the past. I mean, you saw with Clevenger. We got 7 players for Clevenger. So,
Yeah, my thing with that is you get a haul for a player, but like you want to talk about the Clevenger stuff, and I just, we got Naylor, who, like you said, he did really, really well in the 2 games that we got in the postseason. But, I just don't know how satisfied people will be with just getting prospects. And obviously, like you said, that's kind of how the Indians have been working and been able to, stay in the playoffs for so long. They kind of just work the trade block and with who they have and, find diamonds in the rough and roll with it. But yeah, it's not a favorable topic of conversation for us right now, especially with this just coming off of an awful 2-game loss. But
right.
let's move into some more cheerful and optimistic lookouts for us. Let's talk about the Browns in this Week 4 matchup against Dallas. So
Yes,
for me
sir.
for me personally, this is probably going to be, and I say this now, I think this could be one of the most, if not the most fun game to watch for the Browns, just because of how lackluster and poor the Dallas defense has been this season so far.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna keep bringing it up, but just another week where I'm more excited to watch the Browns play, compared to the last week. Um, that Redskins game, Washington football team.
Right?
My
See,
apologies.
see,
That's the
it
first time I've
happens.
done it.
I
That's the first
know,
time I've
I
done it.
know.
But I mean, just coming off of that game, now we're building momentum. This is the momentum we've talked about, and Dallas is an interesting team. I mean, I got a lot to say about them. I don't know how your feelings are on them besides, defense, but I'd like to hear about how you think, maybe about how they're going to game plan for us.
Yeah, so obviously, offensively for the Dallas Cowboys, they have so many weapons over there. I'm not going to talk about Dak too much because I don't have a high opinion about him, but I will talk about Zeke, and I will talk about Gallup and a Cooper and CD Lamb. I mean, just talk about listing off talent right there. I mean, Zeke is a premier running back in the league, along with Nick Chubb, who we have, and Kareem Hunt, who we have. I put them all in the top 10 category for sure. But that's not the part of their offense that's really going to hurt us, I think, honestly. You watch the Seahawks kind of keep Zeke under wraps for the majority of that game last week and have to rely more against the pass offense with Dallas. And, it's not hard to game plan around a team that has a poor, back seven, which I still think we have. Granted, last week we played really well and guys stepped up, but I just don't think Washington has the talent compared to Dallas. And the wide receiving core over in Dallas is just stacked, just kind of like ours. And there's a lot of room for them to take advantage against us with that talent over there.
Yeah, looking at the stats I have pulled up, I totally agree with you about Ezekiel Elliott. I just don't think Mike McCarthy has it really figured out over there yet. I mean, Ezekiel Elliott with 219 rushing yards and Dak with 1,100, almost 1,200 passing yards through 3 weeks. Kind of a more balanced, different look for us. Chubb with 300 rushing yards nearly, and Baker with only 564 passing yards. So, looking at this from the pessimistic side, if this gets into an air battle, a Baker versus Dak battle. I know you're not extremely high on Dak Prescott. I actually am someone who is. I don't know if he's worth 35, 40 million a year. I think that's up for, pretty good debate, but I definitely think the slander he receives is sometimes, unwarranted, especially compared to other quarterbacks in the league who maybe don't receive as much. But I think, if you're looking at it from a negative standpoint, that Dak, if it's a toss up between, who's going to play better, Dak or Baker, I think that we might be at a little disadvantage there.
Yeah, so I'm just going to pull up the stats here for everyone to see, like you were talking about here. And so Can you see that all right, Jeff?
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm just going to zoom in a little bit more. So obviously, like Jeff was saying here, Dak's got almost 1,200 yards, Zeke with 219. And then with Amari, he leads the group, but there's actually three of them, Amari, Michael Gallup, and CeeDee Lamb, who are all over 200 yards receiving already, which compared to the Browns, we're over here. Odell's got 155, and Jarvis Landry's only got 143. It kind of just goes back to your point, Jeff, where if it gets into that air battle, Baker only throwing for 564 yards isn't great. I mean, that's what Dak's got in like less than 2 games. My thing with how I want this game to go is I'm usually a big believer in the fact of trying to start the game with the defense. But in this particular game, I think it would be more beneficial for us to start with the ball. And the reason I say that is this is how I would want the game to go. I would want us to start with the ball and go down, score, be up 7 right away. That puts them in the passing situation immediately. Obviously, it's super early on the game, and they'll probably still try to give Zeke their touches, but knowing our defense, I'm sure they'll game plan around passing the ball a lot more than they have in the past. But if you can start the game with the ball, go down, score, then the next key to the game is you don't have to stop them from scoring, but you do need to end that first half with the ball and possibly either being in the lead or scoring in on that drive. That way they can't come out and, get that double dip where they go into halftime, they score, they come out of halftime and score again. I just don't have that much faith in our defense for this game. This is going to be one of those games where I think we've projected so far in the first 3 games that we'd either win by a lot, or I think with you in the Ravens game, I think you had it a little bit more further away than I had it closer. And I just think this is going to be one of those games where it's going to end up being all the way down a nail biter to the fourth quarter. And it's going to be in the upper 30s for both teams, I think.
Right. I think that, our week 1 kind of blunder is going to hopefully aid us a lot in this game just because we have played a team that's good. So, I mean, we're not walking in there after, just kind of smoking 3 like below average teams. So I think that helps us. And I think in some weird, I don't even know how to describe it, but in some weird counterproductive way, our bad back 7 almost helps us because what I've noticed with the Dallas Cowboys, especially just because I have Dak Prescott on my fantasy team, is that they start very slow in the first half, and they do get away from Zeke Elliott, quicker than I think that I would like if I was, a part of the Dallas Cowboys fan base. But I think if we really control the first half and we have a good lead at halftime, I mean, we're going to have to fend them off in the second half and, hopefully go blow for blow with them. But I think that somehow they're going to game plan for Dak to throw 40 or 50 times. And, maybe with our defense getting a little bit healthier and getting a little bit more on the same page, if they don't give Zeke the time of day and, our front 4 kind of eat up there, I think it's another good matchup for us, even though our defense hasn't been, outstanding.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, Dak has done an even better job than Baker has in terms of not turning the ball over too much. Obviously, Baker has 2 interceptions and Dak has 2 interceptions. It's just really impressive how these 2 have done in terms of protecting the ball. I think, if you throw 2 interceptions, and obviously Dak only did that last game, so he's gone 2 games very clean with the ball, throwing it wise. It's really hard to try to put so much pressure on the back 7 when they're throwing the ball very precisely and, keeping it out of the other team's hands, where your talking point with our front 4, they really do need to come into this game and kind of have that, signature pressure that they've been giving a lot of quarterbacks that we've gone up against. I mean, Myles Garrett is going to have to play out of his mind again. He's going back to his home in Texas along with Baker Mayfield. And I think they really need to show out in that top 4. But also what I'm hoping to have, and we can dive into this a little bit, is have a healthy rotation of cornerbacks, because for the most part, you'll see that a lot of our defensive formations are the 4-2-5, which I talked about a lot going into this season. You see a lot of Tavier Thomas, who I'm not a huge fan of. He had a good game last week, but I'm not a huge fan of his coverage. If you can get Denzel, Greedy, Kevin Johnson, and Terrence Mitchell to all be healthy for this game, which Denzel is currently day-to-day with a groin injury, which he played through last game, but he's currently limited for practice. Greedy Williams, who's returning from a shoulder injury, I believe they will actually play him this week. Maybe they'll do the Kevin Johnson of last week where they kind of put him in rotationally. Kevin Johnson should be full now for this game. He played last game and he's having full practices. And Terrence Mitchell, obviously, he's been the healthiest out of the four in that group. If you can get those four kind of ball hawks into this game to cover Gallup and Lamb and Cooper, I think what you were going on about with our back seven could be potentially, I don't want to say opportunistic, but if you get Myles Garrett to get into that pressure and get into Dak's head a little bit, you could see another game with a lot of takeaways, and that could be really interesting, but it could also just be devastating with how much we get picked apart.
I just think if we piecemeal together a defense, I don't think everyone has to be like 1,000% healthy. I think it worked well last week. Obviously, the Washington football team, a different offense, a different beast. This Dallas Cowboys team is going to be way better. But just having guys out there, having a good rotation, like you said, and just really adapting the game plan. I think this is going to be a really big week. I feel like every week's going to a big week for Stefanski, but this is another huge week of just how he's going to manage the whole squad, because this Dallas team is pretty comparable to the Ravens team we faced week 1. I mean, Lamar Jackson gets out of the pocket and, even when he was in the pocket, kind of torches us a little bit with his arm. We deal with Burrow and Haskins, who, both really didn't have great offensive lines. We get the job done, but both two guys that don't have the scramble potential. And now, we get Dak, who hopefully we could sack him, hopefully we could get to him. Like you were saying, I know that you were pretty frustrated in the Ravens game, how it felt like we had good pressure. We just never really hit Lamar Jackson that hard. So, Dak's going to be able to do stuff with his legs, and we just have to really limit his playmaking ability, escaping Myles Garrett and escaping, our defensive linemen. So if we could adjust and adapt and, maybe go watch the Ravens film and, see what went wrong with Lamar Jackson, and hopefully we could tailor our game plan defensively to that, I think we're going to be okay.
Yeah, and so, we could talk about the defense a little bit more, but in my opinion, I don't think that the defense is going to be the talking point at all this game. I think it's really going to come down to the offense, and more specifically, I think it's just going to be Baker Mayfield. I keep on saying it. I keep saying that he's going to have one of these days where he's going to have like a really good game, or I really want him to have a really good game. I don't think this is one of those games where I think where I want him to have a good game. I think this is going to be one of those games where he needs to perform to his absolute best. And what that means for the Browns to win is your biggest thing, Jeff, is he needs to keep it clean. He can't turn the ball over. You can't really air mail it like he has in the past, or, with that one Odell throw, he can't underthrow it so much where, it costs you a touchdown and also costs you the possession of the ball. I love Nick Chubb. I love Kareem Hunt. They're both over 200 yards rushing, which they're the only tandem in the NFL to be right now. I think Chubb is going to have to take a back seat in this game, honestly. I wouldn't shy away from giving him the touches as long as we're in the lead in this game. But, Kareem's a much better third down running back than Nick is in terms of getting out of the backfield and catching the ball and making some things happen. But I just think this is going to be a game where, we finally see Baker throw for 30 plus times, maybe even 40 plus times, and throw for multiple touchdowns. But, I'm just going to keep referring to you about this, Jeff. The interceptions, if we can win the turnover battle again, I think we come out of this game with a win. I think it'll be tightly contested all the way through. But the keys for me in this game, I'll break it down. You can't turn the ball over more than the Dallas Cowboys do. You got to take the lead and keep the lead. You can't do what you did last game where, you go into halftime and you have a really nice lead and then blow it all in the third quarter and have to come back in that fourth quarter. It's just not going to work against the Cowboys. They're very good offensively. They'll keep the ball and they'll go and they'll score almost every drive, I believe. And finally, for me, it's just got to be Baker staying in the pocket and staying confident. A lot of those times he runs out of the pocket to the right and drills guys for really nice gains. But 2 games in a row now, he's done that thing where he's rolled out and he's kind of just chucked the ball and doesn't get past the line of scrimmage and he gets drilled with a intentional grounding. I think he's just got to stay in the pocket a little bit longer. And I think, listening to him do his interviews, I'll continue to say he sounds really great in his interviews. And he's talking about, listening to his feet and kind of just being able to set his feet and really let go of the ball and kind of just get those passes that we saw in year 1 with him, where they're really precise, they're really clean, they're really crisp. They get to his target insanely quick and, just allow his playmakers, let Odell, let Jarvis, let Kareem, let all these guys, Austin Hooper, let these guys get some open field and kind of do what they do and make some plays.
We'll see after this game, but I really do think that Kevin Stefanski has done a great job setting up our kind of offensive scheme where Dallas is probably going to have to put a lot of, defensive, they're going to have to focus their defense on, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And I think this is a perfect week, like you said, to take advantage of, run some play actions, get a high percentage of play actions, keep Baker's fundamentals and his footwork on the play actions crisp and, kind of keep their defense, keep the Dallas Cowboys defense, on their heels the whole game. And I think what you're really talking about there was like just good game management. I think this team really does excel when we manage the game, for 3 quarters minimum. Like you said, we kind of fell asleep in the third quarter last week, but I think just really allowing the wide receivers to just cut them loose and keep the offense, dynamic and make sure that we're running Kareem Hunt, flexing them out to, the wide receiver spot like we did last week and all that stuff and in between. But I'm fine with Baker, if Baker has an interception, it's really just, there's a couple of things with Baker. If he throws an interception, it's when did it happen? And was it really dumb or was it like a little bit unlucky and like half dumb? If it was half and half, I'm fine. If he has 350 yards and 3 touchdowns, I'm fine with him throwing an interception because he's probably going to throw the ball 30, 35, 40 times. So I think, the Baker, he just can't. The problem I see with him throwing the interceptions, and I believe it was the Ravens game, or the Bengals game, he throws it. We can't have an interception on our first drive. We got to have a clean first drive. We got to have Baker's confidence throwing the ball at the highest it is, in the first half, in my opinion, because he really does ride that out through the rest of the game.
Yeah, and that was the Ravens game where he threw the interception early on, and then he had in that Bengals game he threw it and he just kind of didn't throw it up top enough for or over the head of the safety. But for me, I would agree with you. If he's throwing it 30 to 35 to 40 times a game and he's throwing for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, I think you're dead right about where that interception comes in. If it comes in the second quarter sometime, I think that is the most preferable time because you don't want it to really happen in that second half because then, you get kind of flustered with yourselves and you don't really get enough time to get past it. Whereas, you don't want to throw it in the first drive. The first drives, I hate when that happened. It happened last year in the very first game with the Titans game, and it happened, like you said, in the Ravens game for very first drive. I think if he throws it in the second quarter, I'd be perfectly fine with that. But I think it all comes down to Baker. I think, he's got to take advantage of the Dallas Cowboys back seven. Like teams have taken advantage of our back seven. They're very poor. They are supremely poor, but their front four is very much like our front four. Very good, very talented. They can get to the quarterback very well. our offensive line is going to have to play like it has been and just kind of keep Baker clean and make sure he's not on the ground too much. And I think we could see a vintage game. I think we can see one of what, everyone has hoped to see out of the first pick of that draft a couple years ago, and kind of just see that Baker is truly the guy here for Cleveland. And, he's going to be that guy for some time. And if the Browns can pull a win out in this game in particular, it boasts a very good message for the rest of the season, because I consider Dallas to be one of those really good teams, honestly, as much as I hate them and I hate the Cowboy fan base. I mean, I just think that this is one of the games where me and you had marked up being a loss.
Nope. I got it as a win.
Do you really?
Yep.
I think this is where I had us lose our first game, because I did have us win against.
Yeah. We both had
Ravens.
3-1 after 4. So.
Okay. Yeah. But I mean, Colin Cowherd, as much as I hate the guy, he was like, oh, this next 4 games will really decide the viewpoint of Baker in Cleveland. And so I honestly think it's this game and this upcoming Indianapolis game that is truly going to decide what people think about Baker. And it could put him in, he's elite, or he's, just kind of there and he's, game managing the game for us. And that's not bad, but it's not what you want out of Baker. You really do want to see him have one of those elite games where he proves a lot of people wrong. And I honestly think if he can do that and we can pull out the win, it boasts a very, very, potent Browns team moving forward.
I totally think this is, Baker's breakout game. I'm even going to go ahead and say probably the biggest game of his young career, just because, you're 2-1, like that's nice and all. You beat the Bengals and the Washington football team. Like awesome. Glad that we could get the job done, but like, what are you going to do next? And I think Dak Prescott is one of those guys that I could understand why people don't like him. He chirps and he's always asking for more money. He thinks he's top 1% of quarterbacks in the league. I mean, he's good. I don't know if he's great yet, but I think that a lot of people don't even really have him and Baker on the same, spectrum or like comparable. I think Baker outplays Dak this weekend. I think it's probably one of the better games of that we've seen from Baker thus far. I'm hoping. That's why I have it down as a win. And I think we go into Dallas, and I think we pick this game up.
Yeah, and just to talk about that point you made, we're 2-1. We lost to a team that we should have lost to.
Right.
Granted, I picked us winning that game. That was me trying to be, hopeful and trying to be optimistic. But guess what? That was just a team that was better than us, and they showed it. Then we played Cincinnati, a team that we should have beat. We beat. Thank you. Played Washington, a team we should have beat. We beat. Thank you. But now it's time to go into one of these games where it's not so cut and clear on who the better team may be. I mean, both teams have, played reasonably well. They've had to come back. Dallas has twice now and kind of pull out wins. They didn't win last week, but they, were pretty darn close. They were winning in the fourth quarter for some time and then ended up losing to Russell Wilson and the Seahawks. But, they came back in that Atlanta game by a pretty big deficit and won their game. If we can win this game, it's against a team that for once it's going to be competitive in all the right reasons. So I'm going to say my prediction for this game, it's going to be high scoring. No doubt about it. I think it's going to be 38-35 Browns.
Wow. That's crazy. I was going to say, and before I get my prediction, going back to the interception thing, because I did have a point about that, is that, and I really don't like giving them props, but Mike Tomlin and the Steelers do this maybe just because I watch a lot of them, but they do it better than any team I could think of in the NFL, which I feel like a lot of people don't touch on, is momentum management. So like you were talking about kind of having that second quarter interception, I'm not really too opposed. Like, I don't really care when it happens, but if we go down and score and kick a field goal and then they come down and score a touchdown, it's 7-3, and then, Baker comes out and turns the ball over, that's just like, that's poor game management. That's poor momentum management. I mean, you see it with the Steelers all the time, and that's why Mike Tomlin's, going to be first ballot Hall of Fame coach. But they come out and they limit their mistakes, like when they're losing and they're trying to climb back into the game. And then when the other team's in the lead, they make them do something stupid. Or even if they're if the other team's, needs a big play, their defense usually comes up big. Just have clutch plays on both sides of the ball. I think me and you have talked about that a lot, through 3 weeks. Just come up big. I feel like I have confidence in this team, 2-1. Not that I didn't before, but now, I mean, I have more confidence in Baker than hopefully ever, and hopefully he just, shuts up the haters and the Colin Cowards of the world. But I have this game 37-30 Brownies.
Oh, that's nice. Winning by a touchdown would be very nice. I think, and thank God Cody Parkey can actually kick the ball like a kicker should. But
Hopefully.
yeah, I mean, he's done it so far, and we're going into a dome, so there shouldn't
And
be.
Baker 91.5 passer rating through 3 weeks. I mean, it's a small sample size, but Dak's only at 98.5. He does have, double the passing yards, but Baker, I believe he has the best passer rating QBR in the AFC North. So
Yeah, and that's, with how little he's had to throw the ball, but
right. Doesn't
obviously
mean everything, but
no, right. But I mean, it's going to be a battle of the quarterbacks, I think. I don't think, with the two premier running backs, I guess the three premier running backs, obviously with Nick Chubb and Kareem and Ezekiel. I just don't think that those three are going to really factor. I mean, Kareem will probably factor in the most, but in terms of the running game, I think it's going to be an all-out assault in the air, and we're going to finally have to see we're going to have to see Baker just be the number one pick that we drafted him for, and we're going to have to see Odell be the that star-studded wide receiver that we traded for and gave up a lot for. I honestly, this is, like you said, and like I said, this game is going to be huge. It's huge in terms of, how entertaining it's going to be and how much it means for both teams moving forward. Honestly, I bet Dallas people are kind of over there just thinking, oh, we lost a close one to the Seahawks, who are an amazing team, but now we get to play the Browns, and they're not that good. And I think a lot of teams will doubt us like that, and I just kind of want them to really show up and show out. So I think we have a good chance. I think there's a good chance that we win this game. It's not like the Ravens game. They're not, fundamentally just a overall better team than us. There's actually a lot of good talking points and a lot of things that we've already gone over for this game. So, but I think that's it. I think that's all we got for this preview and for kind of talking about the Indians and everything. Jeff, you got anything else you want to end with?
I just think the last thing, looking around the league, I just think that this is the Browns' week. Hopefully, written in the stars, however cliche you want to say it. The Ravens,
I like that.
The Ravens just get smoked by the Chiefs. Obviously, probably the best team in football. So, they get knocked off a little bit. The Bengals, how hyped or overhyped or underhyped or whatever they were, not looking very good. And now the Steelers, playing the Titans, a couple players on the Titans come down with COVID. They're postponed. So their bye week's getting flexed to this week. They're 3-0. Hopefully that, kind of stops their momentum a little bit, throws them off. I just think we're in the best situation right now to really take over the AFC North and put ourselves in a really good position. Not looking ahead, but going into the Colts game, 3-1 with the Steelers having 3 wins and the Ravens, being 2-1 now, and the Bengals just looking a little bit lost. I mean, that looks like a picture perfect for me.
Yeah, momentum and keeping it and pushing it forward is, going to be the big key for this Browns team. Obviously, you can't get down on yourselves after a loss, but you need to kind of hype yourselves up a little bit and kind of pick up on that whole momentum swing. You carry 2 games into 3 games, and 3 games adds up to 4 games. And, that helps you build and establish confidence and a team identity of winning, instead of what we've had where, first time 2-1, we're over 500 for the first time since 2014. That's huge. Could you imagine if for the first time since 2014, we go 3-1, and that's even bigger. And that's going to be the first time in a very, very long time that we've, been that far above 500 and for that long. So I'm expecting good things. I'm expecting really good things. So, But we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for listening, watching. Again, this is a video now, and we have audio as always. So this is episode 12 of the Cleveland Pulse podcast. And I want to thank you all again for watching. If you could share any way you do, if you're on YouTube and you're watching this off of YouTube, like, share, comment, subscribe, do all that great stuff. But you're on the podcast, just send this to your friends, your family, honestly, coworkers. Turn it on when you're working and all that. And we appreciate you. So thank you. Jeff, anything?
Nope. Lucky number 13 up next. Hopefully it's a good one, either Sunday or whenever we get to it.
Absolutely. Thank you all for being here, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.